Ask 10 people what they know about South Carolina, and 9 of them give you the same 3 words: Charleston, beaches, golf. That's the whole postcard, and it's exactly the version the real estate industry wants a retiree to buy. The overpriced Charleston condo, the Hilton Head golf villa, the $4,000 a year insurance bill for a beach you'll visit maybe twice a summer. Here's what almost nobody tells you, and what most retirees never see coming. There's a second South Carolina, and it plays by completely different rules. A version where a house costs less than a new pickup. Your neighbor actually knows your name. And that Social Security check stops being a survival budget and starts feeling like money. I spent months driving the parts of this state that never make it onto a brochure, and some of what I found, I still can't quite believe. A man who turned a pile of half-dead nursery shrubs into a topiary garden people fly in to see. A mountain town that aged blue cheese inside an abandoned 1850s railroad tunnel. The birthplace of the trumpet player who basically invented modern jazz. A downtown that leaves its streets unpaved on purpose so the horses don't slip. If any of that sounds better than a $2,000 HOA and a view of your neighbor's screened-in lanai, hit subscribe right now, because we're counting down 12 towns the retirement industry would rather you never discover. And keep one thing in the back of your mind the whole way down this list. South Carolina doesn't tax a single dollar of your Social Security after 65. On top of that, it lets you deduct up to $15,000 of your other retirement income. And property taxes here sit among the lowest in the entire country. That quietly rewrites the math on every town you're about to see. Let's count it down. Number 12, Bishopville. The first thing that made me stop in Bishopville was a garden, and I need you to understand I am not a garden person. But you cannot roll past Pearl Fryer's topiary garden and keep driving. A self-taught man with 0 training took 3 acres of discarded, half-dead nursery shrubs and shaped them into swirling green sculptures that now pull visitors in from around the world. Bishopville sits in Lee County, out in the flat middle of the state, with a population of about 3,000. And here's the number that matters. The typical home is worth around $121,000. That's not a typo, and it's the cheapest town on this whole list. Values actually slipped about 11% over the past year, which means a patient buyer walks in with real leverage. You could buy a house outright here for what a down payment costs in Charleston. This is also home to the South Carolina Cotton Museum, which proudly shows off the world's largest boll weevil, and the swamps nearby gave the state its own cryptid, the Lizard Man of Scape Ore Swamp, a legend that once had a real cash reward posted for its capture. Do the arithmetic for a second. The average Social Security retirement check runs a little under $2,000 a month. In a town where you can own the house free and clear and property taxes are pennies, that check goes from bare survival to an actual life with something left over. The honest caveat is healthcare. Lee County is rural and lower income, so you're trading big box convenience for that price, and there's no full hospital in town. The nearest emergency room is Prisma Health Toomey in Sumter, about 25 miles west. At retirement age, that's a drive you plan around, not one you ignore. Number 11, Edgefield. Edgefield is small. I mean genuinely small. About 2,300 people, but it packs more stories per square foot than towns 10 times its size. It sits in Edgefield County, roughly 26 miles north of Augusta, Georgia, and the typical home runs around $221,000. Here's its calling card. They call it the home of 10 governors, because 10 South Carolina governors came out of this one tiny county. It's also the national headquarters of the National Wild Turkey Federation, which means, yes, there's a giant wild turkey statue you'll want a photo next to. And it sits at the heart of the old Edgefield pottery tradition, the alkaline glazed stoneware made famous by David Drake, an enslaved potter who signed and inscribed his own work at a time when doing so was forbidden. Those pots now go for 6 figures at auction. One of them topped $1.5 million, which is a strange thing to sit with while you're standing in a town where a beautiful old house sells for $200,000. For a retiree, Edgefield hands you a walkable, story-soaked square at a price you can actually clear, with Augusta's shopping, dining, and big hospitals about half an hour south whenever you want the city. The honest caveat is healthcare access again. The in-town medical center is small, so for a full emergency room, you're looking at Aiken Regional Medical Centers, about 26 miles off, or the larger hospitals over in Augusta. For anything serious, plan on that drive. Number 10. Abbeville. Abbeville got me the moment I hit the town square, because the square is built around a real 19th century opera house that still puts on shows. The Abbeville Opera House opened in 1908, and instead of being knocked down like nearly all the others, it's still lit up and running live theater. The town sits in Abbeville County, in the western part of the state, population under 5,000, with a typical home around $216,000, comfortably below the national average. Abbeville carries a heavy nickname, the birthplace and the deathbed of the Confederacy. The first organized secession meeting happened here, and so did one of the last Confederate war councils. Whatever you make of that history, it means the town takes its past seriously and has kept a downtown most places would kill for. The draw for a retiree is simple: a walkable brick square, live music and theater you can stroll to, and a house you can genuinely afford. At around $216,000 with property taxes this low, a couple pulling 2 Social Security checks, plus even a modest pension, can live here most months without touching savings. Abbeville Medical Center is right in town, which for a place this size is a real advantage. The caveat is that this is deeply rural. For a major specialist or a serious procedure, you're driving to Greenville or Greenwood, and the nearest big box shopping is a haul. If your idea of retirement runs on constant errands and options, this quiet may land as too quiet. Number 9. Cheraw. Cheraw earned its nickname honestly. They call it the prettiest town in Dixie, and standing on the village green, surrounded by pre-Civil War homes, I wasn't in the mood to argue. It sits up in the northeastern corner in Chesterfield County, about 90 minutes from Columbia, with a population around 5,000. The typical home runs about $200,000, which for this much history and charm is a flat-out steal. But here's the fact that makes Cheraw unforgettable. This tiny town is the birthplace of Dizzy Gillespie, the trumpet player who helped invent bebop and reshaped American music. There's a statue of him downtown, and a jazz festival every year in his honor. Cheraw also gave South Carolina its first state park. Cheraw State Park was one of the earliest in the country built by the Civilian Conservation Corps back in the 1930s, and it still ranks among the largest of its kind in the state, with a golf course, a lake, and cabins. So a retiree gets fishing, golf, and quiet water minutes from the porch, wrapped in a set of pre-revolutionary homes that give the whole place a museum feel for the price of a starter house. Healthcare is covered right in town by McLeod Health Cheraw, a real hospital, which is rare for a town this small and this affordable. The honest caveat is location. Cheraw is genuinely out in the country, far from any big metro. If you crave the buzz of a city, this corner of the state is going to feel remote. Number 8. Newberry. Newberry is another opera house town, and by now I'm starting to think the small towns of South Carolina cornered the market on them. The Newberry Opera House dates to 1882
and after a full restoration, it books real touring acts, comedians, and concerts that pull crowds from all over the region. Well over 100 shows a year, more live entertainment than most towns triple its size ever see. Newberry sits in Newberry County, about 43 miles northwest of Columbia, with a population near 10,700, making it one of the larger towns on this list. The typical home lands in the mid-$200,000, still well under the national average. It throws its own Oktoberfest, leaning into its German roots, and the historic downtown around the Opera House is charming and walkable. The sweet spot here is the middle ground. Newberry is big enough for real amenities and a steady cultural calendar, but small enough that people still wave. Healthcare is handled by Newberry County Memorial Hospital right in town, so the everyday stuff doesn't mean a long drive. And Lake Murray, with its beaches, boat ramps, and fishing, sits between Newberry and Columbia, so you get a big recreational lake without paying the lakefront premium to live on it. The honest caveat is that for anything major or specialized, Columbia is your destination, about 45 minutes down the road. But being 45 minutes from a state capital's medical centers while paying small-town prices and taxes is exactly the trade a lot of retirees are hunting for. Number 7. York. York threw me because it looks like a movie set, and it turns out film crews agree. They call it the White Rose City, and its downtown historic district covers 340 acres with more than 180 historic structures, one of the largest districts of its kind in the Carolinas. It sits in York County, and here's the catch that also makes it valuable. It's only about 27 miles southwest of Charlotte, North Carolina. That proximity cuts both ways. It pushes the typical home up to around $350,000, the priciest town on this list. But it also means big city hospitals, an international airport, and major league sports all sit within a comfortable drive, while you pay South Carolina's lower taxes and live on a quiet, tree-lined street. Sell a modest house in the Charlotte suburbs, cross the state line, buy something comparable, and you can pocket the difference while your tax bill drops. Healthcare is handled by Piedmont Medical Center over in Rock Hill, about 15 miles away. The honest caveat is right there in the price. York is not the bargain Bishopville is. At $350,000, it's nearly triple, because Charlotte keeps sprawling this way. Values here actually dipped slightly last year, so timing your purchase matters, and buying here means partly betting that the Charlotte spillover keeps coming. So far it has, but you're paying a premium up front for that big city access. If you're enjoying the countdown and you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. I cover towns like these every single week, and the next few are even better than what you've seen. Number 6. Hartsville. Hartsville caught me off guard because it doesn't feel like an accident. Most small southern towns grew up around a railroad crossing. Hartsville was deliberately built as a planned town, and you can feel that intention walking the streets. It sits in Darlington County, about 90 minutes from Columbia, with roughly 7,400 residents. The typical home runs around $230,000, well under the national average, and you get a lot of house for it. What makes Hartsville punch above its weight is Coker University, a small private college that pumps concerts, lectures, and art shows into a town this size, plus free, walkable green campus and continuing education classes right there for a retiree. It's also the headquarters of Sunoco, a Fortune 500 packaging company that has kept the local economy steady for over a century. Add Kalmia Gardens, a 30-acre botanical garden on an old bluff that locals treat like a backyard. And the healthcare here is genuinely handled. Carolina Pines Regional Medical Center sits on the edge of town, a full hospital with over 100 beds and its own emergency and trauma unit. A real hospital, a real college, and homes in the low $200,000 is a rare combination. And a house that would list for $500,000 or $600,000 near the coast sells for well under half that here. The trade-off is simply distance. For a major specialist, you're likely driving toward Florence or Columbia. But for day-to-day life, Hartsville is remarkably self-contained. Number 5. Walhalla. Driving up into Walhalla, my ears actually popped, and that tells you where you are. This town sits at over 1,000 feet of elevation, tucked into the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains in Oconee County, up in the far northwestern corner where South Carolina, Georgia, and North Carolina all meet. Population is about 4,000. The typical home runs around $236,000, and unlike a lot of towns on this list, values here are climbing, up about 5% last year, because people are finding the mountains.
Walhalla was founded by German settlers, and it still throws a full Oktoberfest every October, beer and music and dancing included. My favorite thing, though, is the Stump House Tunnel, an unfinished railroad tunnel carved into the mountain back in the 1850s. It never got completed, and for years, Clemson University used it to age blue cheese because the temperature inside holds perfect year-round. You can walk straight into it. For a retiree who wants cooler summers, real seasons, and hiking trails and waterfalls 20 minutes from the porch, this is the spot. Up in the foothills, the brutal low-country humidity eases off a few degrees, and you're minutes from Oconee Station, Issaquena Falls, and the edge of Sumter National Forest. Prisma Health Oconee Memorial Hospital is only about 8 miles away in Seneca, so care stays close. The honest caveat is the terrain. These are winding mountain roads. The driveways can be steep, and if hills are hard on your knees or your car, walk the specific street before you fall for the view. And for a big procedure, Greenville is your destination. About an hour of mountain driving off, fine for planned appointments, worth weighing if quick access to advanced care is a priority. Number 4. Camden. Camden feels older than it has any right to, and that's because it is the oldest inland town in the entire state. Laid out back in the 1730s, it sits in Kershaw County, only about 32 miles from Columbia, with a population under 8,000. The typical home is around $280,000, and for that, you get wide, tree-canopied streets and grand old houses that look like a film set. But Camden's real identity is horses. This is the self-proclaimed steeplechase capital of the world, home to the Carolina Cup, a race run every spring since 1930 that draws over 70,000 people to a single afternoon. There's even a National Steeplechase Museum in town. Camden was also the site of a major Revolutionary War battle, so the history runs deep. On Cup weekend, the whole town dresses up and the infield turns into one enormous garden party. The rest of the year, it settles back into a quiet, elegant southern town. For a retiree, that's a rare mix. Genuine sophistication, an easy drive to the state capital, and a real hospital right in town. MUSC Health Kershaw Medical Center. Stack on South Carolina's low property taxes, the untaxed Social Security, and that $15,000 retirement income deduction at 65, and the monthly math gets very friendly. The honest caveat is water. Parts of the area sit low near the Wateree River, and Camden has seen serious flooding before, so check the flood map on any specific property and factor in flood insurance before you sign. Number 3. Pendleton. Pendleton is a college town that isn't quite a college town, and that's exactly its charm. It sits in Anderson County, right between Clemson University and the city of Anderson, with a population around 3,500. Because it's so close to Clemson, it borrows all that energy, the restaurants, the game days, the culture, without getting swallowed by it. The town is built around one of the largest historic districts in the state, anchored by Farmers Hall on the town green, one of the oldest buildings of its kind still in continuous use in the country. The numbers here run higher than most of this list. The recent median sale price is around $281,000 because Clemson's popularity lifts everything nearby. But you're paying for genuine access. Lake Hartwell is right there for boating and fishing,
Clemson's cultural events are open to the public, and Greenville is less than an hour away. Auditing a class, catching a lecture, using the library, all of it is on the table when a major university is 15 minutes off. And it keeps your mind as busy as your calendar.
Healthcare is solid, with AnMed's full medical center about 14 miles down the road in Anderson, and Greenville's big hospital systems within the hour. The honest caveat is twofold. It costs more, and on a Clemson football Saturday, the traffic in this whole area is something you'll want to plan your errands around. If you've made it this far, do me a favor and hit the like button. It genuinely helps this reach more people trying to figure out where to retire in South Carolina without going broke. Number 2, Aiken. The first time I drove into Aiken and saw that they leave some downtown streets deliberately unpaved, I assumed it was neglect. It isn't. They keep those dirt lanes for the horses, and that one detail tells you most of what you need to know about this place. Aiken is horse country, the winter home of thoroughbred training for over a century, with its own triple crown of races every spring. It sits in Aiken County, near the Georgia line, with a population around 30,000, big enough to have everything you need, small enough to still feel like a town. The typical home is around $280,000, and values have climbed steadily, up over 3% last year, because people keep discovering it. What sets Aiken apart is Hitchcock Woods, a 2,000-acre urban forest right inside the city, one of the largest in the country, laced with trails you can walk or ride for free. Downtown is full of restaurants, galleries, and a genuine winter cultural season left over from the wealthy Northerners who once made this their escape and called themselves the Winter Colony. There's polo most weekends in season, a symphony, and a mild climate that lets you garden nearly year-round. Healthcare is handled by Aiken Regional Medical Centers, right in town. And here's where the tax setup really pays off. Your Social Security is fully exempt. At 65, you deduct up to $15,000 more of retirement income. And property taxes on a $280,000 home are a fraction of what you pay up north. The honest caveat is that Aiken sits near the Savannah River site, the old nuclear complex, and the summers are genuinely hot and humid, the kind of July afternoons that keep you indoors by 2. But for a town with a real hospital, a 2,000-acre forest, this much culture, and homes near $280,000 instead of the $700 or $800 you'd pay for the same life on the coast, Aiken nearly runs away with it. Number 1, Seneca. And the town that takes the top spot is the one that answers this whole video's question. The pitch from the start was simple. The coast is overpriced, so where does a retiree go instead? Seneca is where the water starts, and it beats the coast at its own game. It sits in Oconee County, right next to Lake Keowee, one of the cleanest, clearest reservoirs in the state. Water so blue, it looks staged. The lake is spring-fed and famously clear because it sits at the base of the mountains, and Duke Energy keeps the shoreline carefully managed, which is part of why it stays that color. The population is around 9,000, and the historic downtown, known as Ram Cat Alley, is a genuinely fun strip of shops, restaurants, and live music that got its odd name from the alley cats that once prowled it. The typical home is around $230,000, though anything with actual lake frontage climbs well above that. For a retiree, Seneca is a lifestyle pick. Boating, fishing, and lakeside sunsets, the Blue Ridge foothills right behind you, and Clemson just 15 minutes away for football and culture. And the healthcare here is a real strength. Prisma Health Oconee Memorial Hospital is right in town, so you're not gambling on distance. This is the place where a retired couple can trade a cramped, expensive coastal condo and the $4,000 wind and flood insurance bill that rides along with it for a house near clear mountain water and come out ahead every single month. The honest caveat is that the lake dream isn't free.
True waterfront is genuinely expensive, and summer weekends bring tourists and boat traffic. But you can live a few minutes off that water for a fraction of the cost and still be swimming by noon. Coastal South Carolina can't touch that math, and that's why Seneca sits at number 1. If you visit one town on this list, make it this one. The 12 towns on this list aren't famous. They're not on the billboards, and they'll never run a Super Bowl ad. But every one of them holds something the big South Carolina cities gave up a long time ago. Character, an affordable house, a real hospital nearby, and a front porch where a neighbor might actually sit down and talk to you.
Pair that with a state that doesn't tax your Social Security, hands you a $15,000 deduction at 65, and keeps property taxes low, and a fixed income finally gets room to breathe. If this made you rethink where you might retire in South Carolina, subscribe. I drop videos like this every week. The best small towns, the cheapest places to live, and the real estate tips the industry keeps out of the brochure. Now do me one favor. Drop a comment and tell me which of these 12 towns you'd actually pack up and move to. I read every one. See you in the next one.